Today we have a new director with us who, whilst debuting their first short with their own take on the social realism genre, has already shown us a lot of promise with the tester released last year, Homecoming. As such, I'm very excited to see what the young director Becky Brown has to offer in this new short, Rocket. The film is a 5-minute social realism film. Although mainly a niche genre, did you find that your primary audience fitted within this convention, or that it went against it and became a more mainstream short?
Well, to start, I looked at the overall audience for the genre. The story I want to bring to the audience is autobiographical from my childhood. Whilst the idea of a realistic event does fit within the social realism, the story itself is not the usual gritty plotline we see in the genre. And as such, I felt I may not gain my demographic for the story with the audience of the genre. To make the two join together, I felt I needed to create more elements of drama to ensure I could reach my younger demographic, and then would be able to show the genre to a wider audience. I saw this when I looked at my target audience research, and saw that a lot of the short films my young audience watched were often comic or drama, and as such thought I needed to include part of this into my film. As a comic approach would not be suitable for the plot, I felt that to include elements of drama would be easy to do. And I liked that idea, that I could introduce a younger audience to the genre and make them aware of more realms of film whilst keeping it entertaining. It took a lot of research and planning to ensure that we could do this considering our audience. Only time will tell if we manage to do it, but I think we have.
Yeah, and you've often been known to collect the research for your target audience in new media ways, such as through social networking. Do you find this to be a useful and reliable way of collecting your data? I mean, was it helpful considering the wide age range of your audience?
Yes, I usually do. I feel that the internet, and in particular social networking, is such a great tool for market researchers, as it allows us to see our audience and speak directly to them with very little hassle for either party, and in a speedy way. However, as you say, my audience was far wider for this film, as I wanted to make it accessible for the whole family, and the only way I was going to do this was to find out how the different ages felt about the themes and issues in my film, so that I could include the layers of meaning to how I created the story. To get this wide spread of the market, I first looked at my main audience, the avid social realism watchers. To do this, I searched the streaming and review sites such as Mubi, IMDb and YouTube. Then looked into the blogs, reviews and most watched lists to see what they enjoyed about social realism films and which social realism films they enjoyed. As I then compared this with their profiles, which expressed the blogger's age, gender, and often where they live and profession, I was able to gain a greater understanding of my first target audience. However, this was still widespread in the people I'd looked at. Whilst they shared a common interest of an enjoyment from film in the social realism genre, their ages and genders and whereabouts in the world were still quite widespread. So as a result, I went more specific with my research and used my usual tactic of social networking to gain a spread of my audience. I placed an online questionnaire onto a Facebook group and then unpicked the answers. The great thing about this way of collecting data is that you need no investigation into the person that you're looking at, as all you need to know is on their profiles, allowing me to gain a greater understanding of the people answering my questionnaires and understanding more clearly their answers as a result. However, through using Facebook, this only really helped me to reach teens from about 12 to 18 years. To gain my older audience, I used the more traditional methods, starting with paper-based questionnaires, and then for the elderly market, I did a face-to-face discussion group. The paper-based questionnaires worked really well in the traditional sense. They are an easy way of collecting data. However, it is just slightly harder to collect it in this way, as you have to go and find the people to fill them in, and they then have to complete and send them back, taking more time as opposed to the social networking. However, a plus for paper-based questionnaires is that anyone can do them. The discussion group worked really well, as I was able to unpick answers there and then gain a real understanding for that age group's views, as they were able to not only feed off their questions but also other answers, allowing them to create a debate on some topics, giving me a real understanding of the age group and how certain issues would be viewed in more than one way, allowing me to gauge where I needed to be sensitive in my handling of the topics. But also, these methods helped me to gain more and more knowledge about the views on the film's main issues, and also the ways I'd be able to reach my audience.
Mm-hmm. So what sort of issues arose from those forms of research? I mean, did you find that the wide audience viewed the themes and issues differently, and how did these differences change?
The issues were definitely received differently by the different age groups, although not always in a big way. I found that my main issues, childhood innocence and global warming, were both viewed differently by the groups. For instance, with the younger audience from ages 12 to, 16, 18, or thereabouts, the ideas of global warming and social deterioration were just progression and natural. Very few felt that it was something to worry about, although there was a divide between males and females in that more males were less concerned and must thought it to be change, where a lot of girls felt that it was something that was a concern, or if not concern, something which was negative. Within adults, they felt that deterioration was something which was being dealt with, and as such also felt that it was not too much of an issue. For the more elderly audience, their concerns grew with the idea of social deterioration and said that they felt there were a lot of issues which should be dealt with. However, they didn't feel that environmental issues were a problem, and in fact, they felt that this was more of a con, again agreeing with the natural progression element. With the idea of childhood innocence, most in all generations and genders felt that this was a cause for concern, with children being exposed to more adult images and the lack of restrictions within society today. Others also used the issues already mentioned of social, environmental, and even economical deterioration as a reason that future generations would have an issue with lack of innocence in the future. Having found this, I felt I needed to tackle these issues in my film, using the understanding I had of how the audiences would view different elements of the issues.
Okay, so having conducted your research, did you then feel that you needed to discover more about your demographic in order to represent specific elements of your film coherently to your audience?
The main difficulty that I realised from my younger audience, the 5 to 10-year-olds, was how to make it appear realistic to them and exciting for them. As the story starts, it is meant to appear monotonous and dull, to echo the emotions of my protagonist. I decided to attempt to make the younger audience echo my protagonist's emotions, and as such create an interactive film in which they can completely empathise with the character and make them uncover, as Kate does, the brilliance and hardships of the world, making a very poignant piece of cinema.
Understanding the usual conventions and themes of the genre, drugs, violence, antisocial behaviour, to name a few, did you feel the need to stretch the conventions of the genre, not only to enable the story to fit, but also to ensure that the target audience was reached?
To be honest, I don't think the film would have worked without stretching the conventions. It needed to have a fantasy element to it to convey the ideas of childhood innocence and gain an understanding of the character's mindset. I wanted to convey certain elements in a similar way to how Tom Ford did in A Single Man, with the contrast of colours and saturation conveying to the audience the elements which stimulated the protagonist. By this I mean that I wanted to show a contrast to the moments which my protagonist is disinterested in, and the moments when she is fully stimulated mentally. I felt that the way Ford conveys the contrast between his protagonist's monotonous depression and the infrequent moments of elation and stimulation was one which I wanted to replicate. However, I decided not to do this in the same stylistic way because of the genre, as I felt that this would take it too far into the drama genre. Instead, I used editorial pace with sequential shots and then long shots which were able to breathe to convey this. However, this being said, it still gave a dramatic quality, which I felt was a great way of gaining my wider audience, as it makes the film more stylistic and as such will appeal to the younger ages and older due to the way the events are conveyed more excitingly.
Right, so social realism is rarely brought to the masses, which is evident within informative documentaries, for instance, with the established IMDb not recognising the genre. Do you feel that this creates boundaries between your audience and the film, as it creates a lack of understanding about the genre itself that can affect the way they both enjoy or even read the film?
Yes, I think it can do, which is partly the reason that have had to stretch the conventions in the way that I've done. I feel that it is the issue that genres are categories in their essence, and the problem comes when people get lazy and ignore things that make the micro genres and the specifics. I saw this when doing my research, that the early bloggers I researched had a great understanding of the genre and its conventions, whereas the social networking, paper-based and discussion forums were less able to understand the genre and often hadn't heard of it or knew any examples from it. This causes the issue of the audience, because when you don't know the genre, you can't relate. When the basis of a social realism film is to make it relatable and realistic for society it's set, it becomes quite difficult. In my film, I've attempted to convey a moment that everyone will have had, maybe not to the same extreme, but it's a simple coming-of-age story with a cardboard rocket. I defy anyone who says that in their early years they never attempted to transform a cardboard box into a train, a boat, or a rocket and escape to another world. And it's that idea of child imagination that I wanted to make my audience go back to or relate to, depending on their age.
Thanks very much, Becky, and really good luck with your film.
Thanks very much.